Hello and welcome to episode 5 of Travel Pointers, the podcast for frequent flyers. It's December 2024. I'm Chris Chamberlain, news editor at Oinhacks.
And I'm Matt Graham, the editor of Australian Frequent Flyer.
Coming up in this episode, we'll chat to Velocity Frequent Flyer CEO Nick Rohrlach about the recent changes announced to Virgin Australia's loyalty program. There are a lot of changes coming, so we're really looking forward to grilling Nick about those. We'll also discuss an up-and-coming destination in Asia that you might want to put on your travel radar within the next year. But first, let's talk about some of the airline and travel news from the past month. Frequent flyers travelling through South Australia will find a new Qantas club waiting for them in Adelaide. Qantas has been busily refurbishing its lounge precinct in Adelaide, the goal being to upgrade the Qantas Club, to introduce a new business lounge and to refurbish the Chairman's Lounge. So far, those works are still ongoing about those other two lounges, but the new Qantas Club is up and running. Let us know what you think. Also for Adelaide, Plaza Premium Group is making a tilt into the domestic lounge front with the launch of a domestic lounge called Flight Club. Of course, we are allowed to talk about this Flight Club. It's not like the movie, as the old saying goes. But as for Flight Club, it'll be coming to Adelaide Airport in mid-2025. It remains to be seen exactly what this lounge will offer and who gets in, but we are hopeful it will be open to Priority Pass and those other lounge programs.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. It's a third-party lounge in the domestic terminal in Adelaide. So if you can't get into the Qantas or Virgin lounges, you might be able to get in with Priority Pass or just pay to go in and use that lounge.
Exactly, and it would be a bit of an upgrade to the Rex Lounge that Priority Pass members can currently use in Adelaide, which is quite small. It's old. It's a regional lounge, so this sounds like it's a bit fresher, a bit larger. And I've been tipped that the space that Plaza Premium will be using was actually set to become a new Rex Lounge back in the days of domestic jet flights.
The Rex Lounge. I did use the Rex Lounge in Adelaide just the day before they suspended their 737 operations, actually. And for about an hour, I was the only person in the lounge, which maybe goes some way to explaining why they had to suspend their 737 operations.
I did like that lounge for that reason. I could sit there and get some work done, but clearly an airline needs more than one passenger.
Yeah, it had a massage chair as well, so it was not bad. But anyway, in other news, Virgin Australia has cut the price of its economy flex airfares. So for those of you who book Virgin Australia flights, you might have noticed that in the past, they have the 3 economy fare brands, the Light, Choice, and Flex fares. And the upgrade from Light to Choice might be just $20 or so, quite reasonable. But then if you wanted to buy up to a Flex fare, which comes with more flexibility, the option to cancel and change it without paying fees and things like that, the difference would be huge. Like it might be more than double the price. And in some cases, it was even more expensive than a business class ticket. Mm-hmm. But they've changed the way that they price the fares. It's now just a relatively small premium over buying Choice, which makes it a lot more compelling to purchase those tickets.
It's also great if you're Platinum, because if you're using your complimentary upgrades, it didn't make sense before to pay a more expensive flex fare to upgrade for free when it was more expensive than business class. So I guess the counter for that is now the number of velocity points needed to upgrade from flex is the same as from choice. But you win some, you lose some. And speaking of Virgin Australia as well, Virgin and Etihad will end their respective partnership on the 1st of June next year. And we'll talk to Nick Rohrlach about that shortly. But what that means is that from the 1st of June, you'll no longer be able to earn or spend velocity points on Etihad flights. Get those bookings in now. They're still available until next year. But Etihad is making a different play for the Australian market, and they've just opened a status match offer for Australian residents who have velocity status, as well as status from a few other selected programs, although Qantas Frequent Flyer is not included. But if you have Velocity Silver, you can be matched to Etihad Guest Silver. And if you have Velocity Gold or higher, the offer from the status match is to match you to Etihad Guest Gold. That's for 6 months, and if you take a return flight on Etihad during that time and credit that flight to your Etihad account, you'll then get a further year of Etihad status, which keeps you in the lounge with Etihad as long as you choose that as one of your gold benefits. It's a bit of a different program. Just be mindful of that. You have to opt in for lounge access, but that is free. And you'll also be able to, use Etihad's lounges, earn and spend points on Etihad's flights through Etihad Guest. So they're basically hoping you'll jump ship to Etihad Guest rather than staying with Velocity.
Etihad's not in an alliance, like it's not in Star Alliance or One World or SkyTeam. They do have a few partner airlines though that you can also use your Etihad Guest benefits on. Like you can use them obviously on Virgin, but only until May next year. And you can also get benefits on ANA, Gulf Air, and Air Serbia. So a few niche ones out there if you're flying Air Serbia in the next little while, for example.
They did have a deal with Korean Air for benefits as well.
Oh, yes. I think Korean Air is still there as well. My bad. Yeah.
But we'll see what happens. But Etihad has also announced 10 new routes they're launching out of Abu Dhabi, and they've made that announcement within the last week.
Now, speaking of status matches, if you live in New Zealand and you currently have status with Air New Zealand or Virgin Australia, Singapore Airlines, United, or a selection of other airlines, you can now express your interest in a Qantas frequent flyer status match. Now, Qantas does have the unadvertised tier accelerator challenge, which is sort of available all the time. It's not advertised, but if you request it and you have status with a competing airline, you can get basically a challenge to earn Qantas Gold status if you fly 200 status credits within 3 months on Qantas marketed and operated flights. Now, the New Zealand status match promo is more generous than this because now the challenge is for 3 months, but during that time you also get complimentary Qantas Club membership, so you can use the lounge when you're flying over those 2 months. You only need to earn 100 status credits instead of 200, and that challenge does not have a requirement for all of those status credits to be from Qantas marketed and operated flights. So if you live in New Zealand, you're thinking about switching over to Qantas, could be a good time.
And even if you're not traveling overseas from New Zealand, you can still earn Qantas status credits on Jetstar domestic flights within New Zealand. I did this the other week and the flight credited to my Qantas account within a few days. It's quick and easy.
Yeah, you just need to book the Flex or the Flex Plus bundle with your fare.
Exactly. And speaking of Qantas points, you can now transfer from Westpac Altitude, as well as the Amplify program attached to St George, Bank SA, and Bank of Melbourne, to Everyday Rewards, the loyalty program of Woolworths supermarkets. It's an interesting backdoor way to get your Altitude or Amplify points into Qantas. But it's fair to say the earn rate through this method is not as good as simply using the direct earning Qantas card from those banks. It is, however, the first new way to earn Qantas points with a non-Qantas co-branded Australian credit card since Qantas made its huge changes to how members earn on credit card spend back in 2009. Back then, the airline ran a time to choose program and it required cardholders to either opt in to earn Qantas points from their existing card, and that would happen automatically every month, or required cardholders to move to a co-brand product. That is a card that has, for instance, Qantas on the face of it, and that can only earn Qantas points. It's very rare to be able to transfer points into Qantas. There are only a handful of cards that still allow it. Even from American Express, you need the metal-plated Platinum Charge card or the invitation-only Centurion card to be able to do that manually rather than automatically. So it's an interesting option if you have those points. However, if your goal is to earn Qantas points, it still makes the most sense to have the Qantas co-brand credit card because you will earn more from every dollar you spend.
And finally, for this month, Fiji Airways has announced that it's going to fly from Nandi to Cairns, which is maybe seems a bit niche. It'll be this Fiji Airways' sixth destination in Australia. Fiji Airways, of course, is going to join oneworld next year, so that's really interesting for Qantas frequent flyers. But yeah, they'll be flying a Boeing 737 MAX 8 from next April, 3 times a week from Nandi to Cairns. And it's timed for really good connections between Cairns and North America via Fiji, particularly the Dallas-Fort Worth flights, which Fiji Airways is just launching now. So I think we'll probably have a lot of Americans on those flights that are joining or finishing a cruise in Cairns.
Perfect. So much easier than having to fly through Brisbane or Sydney or Melbourne just to get over to North America. Being able to head straight across the ocean and cut out some travel time is perfect, while still earning Qantas points and status credits, if that's your thing.
Yeah, great boon for Far North Queensland. New to the world of points or want to level up your game? You can learn even more and improve your travel experience with Australian Frequent Flyer membership. It's completely free to join AFF and participate fully on our lively discussion forums. But did you know that AFF also offers Gold and Platinum memberships with even more benefits? AFF Platinum members get access to our full library of frequent flyer training courses and can attend all AFF webinars. There's 8 per year that I host. And AFF Gold and Platinum members also enjoy discounts with Qantas Club, Lounge Pair, Frequent Flyer Concierge, and more. For full details or to sign up, visit australianfrequentflyer.com.au or click on the link in the show notes. In October, Virgin Australia announced a major overhaul of its Velocity frequent flyer program that will come into effect over the next year. Chris and I talked in detail about those changes in last month's Travel Pointers episode, but for those who missed it, the main things include a reduction in the points you'll earn when flying Virgin Australia, unless you have a Velocity co-brand credit card, changes to the number of points you'll need to book a reward flight or an upgrade, new status tiers, Forever Gold and Platinum Plus, and big changes to the way you earn Velocity status, including a reduction in the status credits you earn on partner airlines and a shift to awarding status credits for Virgin Australia flights based on how much you spend rather than how far you fly and the type of ticket you book. Going forward, you'll also need to earn at least 50% of the status credits needed for Silver, Gold or Platinum status from Virgin Australia marketed flights that you personally fly. Well, in this episode, we're delighted to have the opportunity to discuss these changes with Nick Rohrlach, the CEO of Velocity Frequent Flyer, who joins us now. Welcome to Travel Pointers, Nick.
Thanks, Matt, for having me. It's great to be here.
So, Nick, what was the main thing that Velocity wanted to achieve with the changes that have just been announced?
Look, we've got a lot of member feedback over the years about our program, and one of the most popular things was just the people's desire to have more ways to be rewarded once they reach their status. So we certainly saw it in our data and as well that people would qualify and then maybe their travel would drop off. And people would email me and say, hey, there's nothing more for me once I've hit gold or platinum. And so that was the biggest change that we were trying to make with these changes. Obviously, the introduction of Forever Gold is one huge thing to aspire to. And then also, of course, Platinum Plus as well, really rewarding members for flying more than once they've qualified for Platinum.
And so you've mentioned Forever Gold, and I think that's something that a lot of your frequent flyers were really excited about. Could you just clarify for us that is a fixture of the program and not just a short-term promotion? I think a couple of people were a little bit worried that maybe they might do a bit more flying in the next couple of years, and they weren't exactly sure that would count.
Oh no, I didn't see that, but no, Forever Gold is forever.
Yeah.
Let me assure you. So absolutely, and look, we surveyed our members, and of all the possible things we could do to the program, lifetime status was by far the most attractive. I think it was 58% ranked it as their top choice of our elite flyers, and 82% put it in their top three. So, those emails that I got, but also just the member feedback overall was very overwhelming that that's what people wanted. And so it's really exciting to obviously launch that. And that's recognising, of course, members for their status, but also their loyalty to us over many years.
And you've got the Forever Gold tier, but it's worth pointing out that you don't currently have Forever Silver or Forever Platinum. What's the thinking behind making gold the gold standard?
Yeah, great question. Look again. I'll turn it back to our members as well. So we did focus groups as well as the surveys that I mentioned, and it was very clear. Everyone said concentrate on gold. That's the real sweet spot. And of course, it has lounge benefits, which is a big thing, both with us and with our partners, but also just more generally too. I think it's certainly seen as the sweet spot, the real thing that people want to aim for, and so that's where we decided to start there. Now, it doesn't mean that we won't look at other things in the future, but really, I think everyone told us to concentrate on that one, so that's what we've done.
One of the great features of Velocity as well is family pooling, which is where your family members who live with you can travel or earn status credits and points in other ways, and they flow into your account. So for Forever Gold, it only counts the flying that the actual member has done who is trying to achieve Forever Gold. But could you clarify whether those status credits that flow through from family pooling, whether they will actually count towards the, Forever Gold, what people are aiming for Forever Gold in their own membership? That is the person who originally earned them but pooled them elsewhere.
Yeah, look, we're still finalising some of the technicalities as well. So some of those terms and conditions, we're still going to come out with more clarity in the new year. But obviously, overall, we are really focused on people's loyalty to us. So the family pooling will count for a part of it. But we've sort of got I think some people are calling it the 9,000 point threshold and the 12,000 point threshold. And so we'll come up with a bit more clarity because there's been a few technical questions asked, and we'll clarify that more in the new year. But ultimately, we're not trying to be tricky here. We're really trying to get people to this status, and of course, we do want, as you say, family pooling is very unique, and it's a really important part of our program. We really focus on families here, and so we'll make sure that works going forward as well.
A lot of frequent flyers on our side, on Australian Frequent Flyer, have said that they think the new requirements for earning status are too high. So in a poll on AFF, 73% of AFF members who currently have Velocity status said that they think they will drop to a lower tier once the changes come into effect, and less than 3% think they'll upgrade to a higher tier. So I have two questions about that. I guess firstly, is that actually the point of these changes, to make status a bit harder to earn, and therefore reducing the number of people who have it, and sort of in turn making the benefits better for the people who do keep it? And secondly, what would you say to Velocity members who might be wondering whether or not it's worth keeping their Velocity status with the new requirements?
Yeah, sure. And look, it's great to see the community so active. I have to admit, 25 years ago, I started as a reader of Flyer Talk myself, and it's great to read all the comments in the blogs and in the different forums. And obviously, look, there's always going to be winners and losers from any set of changes. If you have a look at overwhelming though number of people who fly with us, most people fly domestically. In fact, over 80% of Velocity members just fly with VA. People who fly with partner airlines are a really important part of our program. But obviously, my job is to sort of look across the member base and see what people want. And so that's what you see, that the changes do really reward the people who fly with Virgin Australia the most. And we're not making apologies for that, because that's obviously what our job is. So some people and will find that status, for example, if they fly a lot with international partners, will be a little bit harder to attain. But that's because we really wanted to focus these changes, introduce Forever Gold, Platinum Plus, and that sort of stuff, to really make sure that we could afford to do that by keeping an overall balance, and to make sure that this program is sustainable for the long term. So it's really very much focused around those who are most loyal to Virgin Australia, fly the most. And again, I guess I'd ask the members and the readers of AFF to think too, like, we want to make sure that we've got a program here that can afford to keep investing in lounges, keep investing in a series of other benefits as well. And so, one of the other comments I often get is about, why is there not more upgrades available? Why is there not more room in the lounges? All these sort of stuff. We want to make sure that the people who, actually fly with us a lot, and under the old rules, you could just fly with us sort of 4 times, and fly a lot with other airlines. Those people aren't as loyal. So we're really trying to make sure that we're focusing this around those who really focus on us, and therefore they get access to the benefits, like the upgrades, like the lounges.
So that's a fascinating stat that you mentioned. 80% of members, I assume this is 80% of members who travel, will only fly on VA metal. So does that just sort of explain why the focus of these changes has really been on, I guess, the VA related benefits, the earning and burning, to make that so VA central, as opposed to, I guess, some of the other feedback you would have had from frequent flyers over the years, which would have been about the differing levels of benefits between your various partners around the world when traveling overseas?
Yeah, absolutely. And look at that again. It's probably well past 80%, and it is different, perhaps to the AFF readers, or even maybe the people on this podcast too. A lot of them, I suspect, are flying a lot more internationally. Whereas actually, you go across all of our members, and especially some of those people we had in our focus groups, their focus is, how do I make the Sydney Melbourne flying experience really, really great? And so, that's really where we're focused on. It's great to have our international partners for the 1 or 2 trips some of our members take per year on our international partners. But, there's plenty of our customers who are flying, monthly, or if not weekly, in fact, with us around Australia, and really focusing on our investments on those people.
And speaking of short haul, I guess one thing that's coming up that people are excited about is your partnership with Air New Zealand. So what can people expect from that once that goes live? And do you have an update on the launch date for that?
Yeah, great to see Air New Zealand coming back to work with us. We're super excited. It is definitely the number one piece of feedback about our partnership network, that we had, why nothing in New Zealand. So it's great to have Air New Zealand come back to work with us. So obviously in the next phase, or the first phase, will be to have the VA code on Air New Zealand flights, which means you'll be able to earn points and status credits, but also access Air New Zealand lounges as Velocity members. So that's really great. We hope to, in the future, work with Air New Zealand on a wide range of other things as well too, but that's going to be the focus. And as for a date, just stay tuned.
And just looking to long haul, I mean, you've got some fantastic partners around the world. You have a collection of partners in China that members can currently earn points on. It's been a fair while since members have been able to redeem points on those carriers, but most of them are back in Australian skies. Is there any update there as to being able to use your Velocity points on airlines like Hong Kong Airlines, which is back at the Gold Coast from January, Hainan Airlines, etc.?
Yes. Well, as you said, obviously there's been a lot of change over the last couple of years, and it's taken a while for some of those airlines to return back to Australia. But now they are. We'd love to get redemptions back on. Also, too, going forward, we really are trying to make sure those are online redemptions, which requires a lot more setup. It's definitely one of the sort of the frustrations, and which I totally understand, that you have to call the call center. So we'll work our way through. But to be honest, obviously the real big focus for us is on the broader scheme of partners we have. As you know, of course, Qatar Airways is hoping to take an investment in us. But of course, the likes of United and Singapore, there are really big marquee partners, with ANA coming in the last 12 months. Air Canada, South Africans now come back as well. There's frankly been a lot for our team to do to set all those things up as well.
Yeah, I want to ask you about that Qatar Airways partnership. So it was obviously just announced very recently that Velocity will end its partnership with Etihad and go all in on Qatar, I guess, as the Middle Eastern partner. And the investment into Virgin Australia and the launch of Virgin Australia flights to Doha, I guess, is still I guess, waiting for government approval. But if that does go ahead, is there any benefits that Velocity members could expect when flying Qatar Airways that they don't already have now?
Yeah. Look, firstly, I should say that obviously the Qatar investment requires a few approvals, and we don't take any of those for granted. They'll
Mm.
hopefully over the next few months we'll see them. It's about three different separate approval processes that are required. So stay tuned for that. What that also does mean is that when we launch, we probably will get an approval and we'll try and start selling tickets pretty quickly. So I think you'll see changes come through in waves. The new flights will go on sale. Obviously, we already have an existing Qatar Airways partnership, which is fantastic. They treat our members really, really well at the lounges in Doha. Great redemption seat availability as well. And so there'll be new additional flights that'll be added into that. And then also, once we've then got our approval, we can, at the moment, we can't fully talk about these things and coordinate. But once the ACCC is approved, we can have coordination meetings. And so then we can plan out, hopefully, over time, even more benefits. Rest assured, I know there's a lot of things that our members would love to see on those flights, and we'd love to bring to the partnership as well.
One of the things I know that Velocity members really loved when VA was operating its own long haul flights was being able to use your points to upgrade on that metal. So to places like LA or Hong Kong. And the way it used to work is you had to be gold or higher to request the upgrade. But the counter to that is that if there was an upgrade available, you could upgrade almost a year in advance, basically as soon as the flight was on sale, as long as there's space. Are you hoping to be able to bring upgrades to at least the VA wet lease flights into Doha if those are able to go ahead?
Yeah, look, upgrades is one of those things that I know is really, really key. And so it's right at the top of our list of having those put on. It would be really, really important to our member base. As you say, it was a very attractive benefit in the past. So we've definitely got that on our list of things that we're going to try and make happen. I just can't commit to how. And of course, again, the specific rules, whether we do, for example, the same way as we used to, or might not look at it in a new way now, still to be determined.
Mm. One of the great things about the Etihad partnership, and I got to take advantage of this myself a few months ago, is access to the Etihad business and first class lounges for gold members and platinum members. So with my Velocity Platinum status, I was able to get into the Etihad first lounge flying economy. There's been a bit of feedback that when flying Qatar, if you have gold or platinum status, you do get to use the lounge, but Qatar Airways sends those passengers to their gold and platinum lounges rather than the business class and the first class lounges, which is a bit of a downgraded experience compared to their excellent business and probably world standard business and first class lounges. Do you know if there's any scope to allow Velocity Gold or Platinum members to use those higher class lounges in Doha?
Yeah, as you say, Matt, they have some of the best lounges in the world there. I've been lucky to try, I think, probably all of the different ones in Doha, and so that's, I guess, one of those things I mentioned before. Once we get approvals, then we can have a sit down and cooperate. Obviously, they've got their own things to work through. They've got a series of investments, a series of partners who fly through Doha as well. So I suspect if just like some of your members are probably noticing that too, we certainly can see that that's how they do it. But we'll be out there advocating for Velocity members to get as best possible experience. And I know Qatar, the Australian market's big for them and really important, and so they're very keen to see things as well. But again, that's on our wish lists. We'll get into more details once we're approved, and then hopefully announce that out to our members as soon as we can.
What's your longer term vision for Velocity? So these changes all happen within the next year or so, and they're very VA centric. But where do you see Velocity heading in 5 to 10 years? And I guess the same question of frequent flyer programs more broadly as an industry.
Yeah, great question. Look, the first thing that's obvious is really making sure that our program is set up for success with the way we recognise our members today. What that does is that really allows us to then make sure this program is sustainable for the long term. As I said before, there's a series of investments and stuff that you can just make when the business is making money, when the overall program is doing well. That just gives us the confidence to keep investing in the program. So things like Forever Gold and Platinum Plus are very much part of that, and we're looking forward to obviously making the Platinum Plus experience really, really special, a real, as I said, VIP recognition. That might work a little bit differently to the way that some of our other tiers work. But it's really because our crew on board the aircraft just love to give us customer service, and it's the way that they're quite keen to recognise our VIP guests. They're actually some of the most excited about this coming out, which is really cool to see. So I think, as I said, as we go forward over the next few years, really taking these set of changes, but being able to do further investments off the back of that. The other thing then on top of that is, as you've seen, we've really added a series of great new partners. So this year, of course, highlights of AGL and DD. And it's really cool. I don't know if you've seen the DD cars driving around with the Velocity stickers on the side as well too. Just showing that there's so many more ways to earn points suddenly. Now, again, can't give you any scoops now, but I'm really hopeful that next year we'll have a few other new really marquee partners, which gives people ways to earn right across the way they spend in their everyday life. And so finding other ways for people to earn points would be great.
I will hand it to you, that DD partnership does work really well. Literally, the second your ride finishes, the points are in your account.
I know, it's so great, isn't it?
It's very quick.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's very quick.
No, we love the guys at DD, and they've just been so supportive of us. And hopefully they're really enjoying as well, seeing a lot of Velocity members in their vehicles as well. And really great. I mean, it's a great value option. It's a bit like Virgin as well too. But much better value for money for going on a DD. So it's great to see that. And again, going forward too, we really hope to see partnerships like that as well. So that I think that's a lot, as I said, from on the air loyalty side of things, and then non-air as well. You'll see keep seeing new things coming from us. Globally around the world too, we do spend a lot of time looking at what other loyalty programs are doing, and I'd say almost the same things, which is you see a lot of the airline giving new ways to recognise their members when they fly with them. And that's taken multiple different forms. It's actually quite cool to see all the different ideas and sort of, maybe borrow when it's a good one. But also then too, we've seen a lot of other loyalty programs now starting to do more non-air earn options as well. And I think that's just inspiring. We're lucky here in Australia that we tend to be sort of leading edge, but that doesn't mean we have a monopoly on all good ideas. So we're certainly looking at other partnerships around the world. There's quite a series of innovative ones out there, and getting inspiration from that.
Finally, Nick, I happen to know you're a bit of an av geek, and I know that you love traveling. What would be your ideal place to visit on a holiday, and what would be the ideal aircraft to fly there on, in your opinion?
Nice, great question. Look, I have to admit I'm at 98 countries, so I'm starting to work
so close.
out.
What's 100 going to be?
Oh, we're literally debating that at the moment. I feel the pressure to make it really good, just to be the 100. But I have to admit that I used to live in Japan, and I travelled there a lot before I lived there, and even since I've lived there, travelled a lot back. Especially now we've got the ANA partnership. One of the world's best airlines. Great way to fly there. And so I do love Japan. It's one of those countries where Tokyo is obviously super exciting. Biggest city in the world. Lots to do there. But then of course you can go from snow in the north to tropical beaches in the south in the same week basically. There's so much. My list of things to do in Japan only got longer the more time I spent living there, and then even now I still find even more things I want to go do. And as to how to get there, look, I won't lie, I'm an unashamed 747 fan, especially the upper deck, of course. But so it's sad to see it not flying so much now. You pretty much have to go. I think it's what Lufthansa and Korean Air is your only options.
Air China, I think.
Air China, yeah, true, that's right, yeah. So there's not too many of them left now, but the Queen of the Skies literally is the Queen for a reason, right?
Great answer. Nick Rohrlach, CEO of Velocity Frequent Flyer, thank you so much for joining us on Travel Pointers.
Thanks, guys.
Do you need some help to find those elusive frequent flyer reward seats at the front of the plane? Sign up to the free Point Hacks Reward Seat Alerts newsletter and be the first to know when we find new reward seats to popular destinations with your favorite frequent flyer programs. Go to pointhacks.com.au/reward seat alerts or click on the link in the show notes to sign up.
Well, Chris, the name of this podcast is Travel Pointers, and I'd love to give a couple of travel pointers to any listeners who might be wondering about where a good place to travel to next year might be if you're thinking about where's a good holiday destination. And to do this, let's play a little game, Chris.
Okay. Bring it on.
I want you to guess the country I'm thinking of.
Mm-hmm.
The first clue, it's somewhere in Asia.
See, it's not going to be a common destination, so I'm going to go with Brunei.
Ooh, not quite Brunei. The second clue is that its capital city is the coldest in the world. So that would probably rule out Brunei or maybe Southeast Asia.
That rules out a little bit. Moscow's freezing, so I changed my guess to Russia.
Ooh, it's not somewhere I would necessarily recommend Australians to visit in the next year. Okay, I'll give you another clue. Its national airline is called MIAT. So that's M-I-A-T.
I know where we're going here now. There we go.
Okay.
But I won't spoil it.
The final clue. One of the most famous people from this country is a man called Genghis Khan.
I think it's clear we're talking about Mongolia.
We are.
I mean, look, we'll be the first to admit that Mongolia is probably not top of mind as a destination for most Australians. I mean, it's not in the realm of recognition of somewhere like Singapore or Japan. But if you've ever wanted to visit Mongolia, then next year is a great time because right now it is visa-free for Australians. There are no visa forms to fill out. It doesn't cost you anything. Just you turn up at the border, you can go into Mongolia and stay as a tourist for up to 30 days. So the visa waiver is temporary, but it started last year and it concludes at the end of 2025. So is it worth visiting? Matt went this year in the Northern Hemisphere summer, and I guess that makes me wonder, why is summer the best time to go? You did say coldest, so I assume winter might be a time to avoid.
Look, if you really like cold places, by all means go to Mongolia in the winter. It's I'm sure it's quite an interesting experience, but it does get really, really cold. And in fact, one of the problems as well, other than just the fact it is so cold, is that in the capital city, Ulaanbaatar, the city does get quite polluted in winter because people burn rubber to stay warm, even still in the 21st century. But yeah, the summer was like, I went in June and July of this year. It was it was actually snowing on the longest day. So on the 21st of June, the summer solstice, it was actually snowing in Ulaanbaatar, but that was kind of just an anomaly. I was there for a few weeks. Most of the time, it was actually pretty warm and really nice and sunny in Mongolia. So the summer was definitely the time to go, unless you're really, really into extreme cold weather.
I must admit, I like the extreme cold. I've picked destinations before. I'm like, oh, -20. This is so different to Australia. So you haven't sold me yet on the summer, but tell me, what is Ulaanbaatar like? What can you actually do when the weather is friendly and you can go out and about?
Yeah, so Ulaanbaatar itself, it's the capital city of Mongolia. It's a really up and coming destination, really up and coming city, actually quite hip. And there's some parts of the city that were really trendy. There's lots of great restaurants and bars, which really surprised me. The city has developed a lot in the last couple of decades. Just a few decades ago, there were yurts, which in the Mongolian language they call them gurs. So the temporary huts, for lack of a better term, that you can sleep in the desert. The city was still full of them. There's only a few left now. There's now modern hotels and things like that, and actually quite a lot of entertainment options in the city. It's definitely a lot of development going on, definitely up and coming. Unfortunately, one of the problems that comes with that is the traffic. Now, I mean, Ulaanbaatar, it's not hugely busy. You know, it's not like New York. It's not like you walk down the street and there's people everywhere. In fact, even in the middle of summer, there weren't that many tourists, which is one of the reasons that I liked it so much. And I really did enjoy my time there. One of the problems, though, is the traffic. In the CBD of Ulaanbaatar, I found it quicker to walk most places. The reason for this is, I think of the city centre like a grid. So, you've got the northbound, the southbound roads, and you've got the east-west roads. And there's traffic lights at each of the intersections. Just say you're at one of those intersections. When the light goes red, there's cars still queued across the intersection, and then the other direction goes green, but they can't actually get across the intersection because the cars that were going in the in the other road are still queued across the intersection. But they still go anyway, and then they kind of just get in sort of a traffic jam in the middle of the intersection. And then if you multiply that by every intersection in the city, so, the reason that the cars couldn't get across, while the light was green is because the following intersection after it is also blocked. So there's a saying in Mongolia, in Mongolian culture, that it's not good luck to ask how long a trip is going to take. And there's probably a good reason for that. The traffic is not great. The airport as well in Ulaanbaatar is about 40 to 50 kilometers outside of the city. It could take anything from 1 to 3 hours to make that trip if you're coming from the city. So that was a slight issue, but still, Overall, a really, really interesting city. There was a reasonable level of English spoken by the Mongolian people living in Ulaanbaatar, and there's also quite a few internationals and expats there now as well. Like it is definitely an up and coming place, which makes it easy enough to get around with maybe a bit of help from translation apps and hand gestures and things like that. And speaking of hand gestures, one thing that you might find interesting is that there's a custom in Mongolia that if you happen to accidentally bump into someone in the street or, something like this, it's customary to stop and shake hands just to kind of, no harm done, all good, like, sorry. And then you get on with your day, which did actually happen to be someone sort of ran into me with their bike and they stopped and put their hand out. And luckily I'd heard about this custom because otherwise I would have been thinking, what on earth is going on here?
I have to grill you on this because you've mentioned the traffic and the delays, and we've heard about a few nice restaurants and some wonderful handshakes. But what would you actually do in Ulaanbaatar? Why would you travel to Ulaanbaatar?
Look, Ulaanbaatar is like a base to really explore the rest of Mongolia. I really liked it as a city, just a place to spend time and kind of chill out. There are a few day trips you can do quite close to Ulaanbaatar as well. There's a huge statue of Genghis Khan, which is a short drive outside of Ulaanbaatar. Now, this statue is, I think it's the world's tallest equestrian statue. So it's Genghis Khan on a horse, which is a quite specific claim to fame, but really interesting to see. And just on the trip out to see this statue, it's only about an hour and a half drive out of the city. We passed nomads herding flocks of sheep and horses and like all sorts of interesting things to see along the way. The name Genghis Khan, by the way, is the Mongolian name. Genghis Khan's kind of an anglicized version of that name. In Ulaanbaatar itself, there are like theme parks. There's the main square in the city, which has like there's a palace and museums and things like this. And just a few kilometers south of the city as well, there's a great lookout point where you can get a really nice view from a Soviet memorial, which is up the top of that hill, which is, yes, super, super interesting.
Well, there we go. But what else is there to do in Mongolia outside of the capital?
Look, there's a couple of really common trips, like sort of multi-day tours that you can do outside of the capital city. One of them is into the Gobi Desert. I unfortunately didn't get time to do that one, but I did do the other common tour, which was a tour out to the Mongolian steppe. That was a multi-night tour where we basically organized it through just a hostel in Ulaanbaatar after we arrived. We sat down with the owner and she asked us where would we like to go. I was traveling with a friend as well. She asked us where would we like to go and how many days do you have, what we'd like to do. And she sort of custom made a tour out to basically into the Mongolian steppe, which is sort of just the fields. There's a lot of nothing out there really, but that's also kind of part of the appeal of it. It's really calm, and we stayed a few nights out, sort of in kind of the middle of nowhere, but it's surrounded by mountains, and there was a river nearby, and we did horse riding and camel riding out there, and slept in a ger, which was a really interesting experience with a nomadic family. And they had kids there that were learning English and that wanted to play games and things. It was that was a really good experience. We also visited, I wouldn't say it's a city anymore. Now it's more like a town, but it definitely was a city back in the days of the Mongol Empire. A place called Karakorum, which was kind of a historic city when we learned all about the Mongolian Empire, and there was some Buddhist temples there and things like that. But yeah, we also saw like wild horses and things. Unfortunately, on this particular tour, the van, so we were joined, it was my friend and I and someone else who was joining the tour who we didn't know. There was a guide and a driver. Unfortunately, the driver probably could have taken a bit better care of his van because it broke down on the last day of the tour, and we ended up spending cumulatively about 8 hours pulled over on the side of a highway in the middle of nowhere in Mongolia trying to get this van fixed. Yes. And after about 8 hours, the guide sort of turned to our group and said, "This car has no hope." Which we kind of already worked out after about the fourth or the fifth hour. But in the end, no, they arranged for us to get picked up by another tour group, and they took us back to the capital city. But everyone we met along the way was super, super friendly. Not everyone could speak English, but quite a few, especially the younger people, could. Really nice. A lot of people were quite interested in sort of what we were doing in Mongolia and wanted to know a bit about Australia, things like that. And I would just mention as well that Mongolia is a popular stop if you're doing the Trans-Siberian Railway. Now, unfortunately, with a lot of that railway taking place in Russia, it's not really an option for Australians right now to do the whole thing from Beijing through to Moscow or St. Petersburg. But there is a railway system in Mongolia, which if you're interested in sort of Soviet-era trains, which is a bit niche maybe, but it would be a very interesting trip to do.
And how would you get to Mongolia? Clearly, there are no direct flights from Australia, but you can fly via a few different places. And I think even United is launching a new route into Mongolia.
Yeah, that is an interesting one. Now, yes, as you say, there are currently no direct flights. Now, Miat Mongolian International Airlines is, we mentioned this at the start of the segment, that is the national carrier of Mongolia. It wants to join One World, and it also wants to fly to Sydney. And in fact, when I was flying out, there was a sort of a TV screen at the entrance to the Miat Blue Sky Lounge, which was their airport lounge in Ulaanbaatar Airport. And it had a list of upcoming destinations that they wanted to fly to, sort of on a loop that were playing on this TV. One of them was, I believe it was San Francisco. They also had Ho Chi Minh City, Singapore, and the fourth one was Sydney. And they have publicly stated that they do want to fly to Sydney. That would be really interesting if they joined One World and flew to Sydney, and it would make quite an interesting stopover as well if you were flying. They do serve like Istanbul and Frankfurt, so it'd be a really interesting way to get to Europe as well via Mongolia. But yeah, like the most common ways at the moment would be to go through China or Korea, South Korea. You can also go through Japan. I personally flew to Seoul. And then from Seoul, I took Miat Mongolian Airlines to Ulaanbaatar on their direct flight, flying in on the 787 Dreamliner and back to Seoul at the end of that on the 767. And I did write a review for AFF on the 767 flight, which you might want to have a read if you're interested. I'll link to that in the show notes for this episode. But yeah, I really liked Miat Mongolian Airlines. I like that you kind of step on board and it kind of feels, it's a modern airline, good planes and all this, but it kind of feels like you're sort of already in Mongolia. Just the food could have been a bit more Mongolian. It was a bit sort of generic Western food. But yeah, the staff were really nice. And in fact, like on the flight in on the 787, I was sitting in the exit row and sort of across from the crew jump seat. And as we were landing in Mongolia, I was just talking with the flight attendant who was sitting across in the jump seat and just asked, a few questions. He was really interested in what we were doing in Mongolia, where we were from, because I don't think they get that many. Like there are some for sure, but there's not a huge amount of Western tourists going in. And he was, giving us some tips. He taught us a few words of the Mongolian language. Very difficult. I mean, I like languages, but that one was really hard to learn. I still can't really correctly pronounce even the word for thank you, although I did try. But no, he gave us some tips and he was really nice and actually gave us his contact details in case we needed anything while we were in Mongolia. So that was really nice. And as he said, yes, United Airlines as well will even be flying into Ulaanbaatar next summer from Tokyo Narita using a 737. So that could be a really interesting option to get there using Velocity points, flying maybe ANA up to Tokyo, or even using Qantas points to fly Qantas or Jetstar or Japan Airlines into Tokyo, and then jumping on United for the 4-hour hop over to Mongolia.
Interesting. But what other tips do you have for people venturing there? I mean, what's the money situation like? What's the SIM card situation like?
Yeah, so I just used an eSIM. That worked really well. No issues there. And there wasn't, okay, to be honest, out in the steppe or the Gobi Desert, you're probably not going to get that much signal, but certainly in Ulaanbaatar, it was no issues. And the currency there is Tugrik. Now, it is a closed currency, which means that you can't really buy or sell it outside of Mongolia. And I made a little bit of a faux pas here. I withdrew quite a large amount of Tugrik from an ATM when I arrived in Mongolia, and it was quite a large amount. So I put some of it in my wallet and the rest of it in my backpack. You did need cash for some things, like even just when you're out in the countryside, you might need to pay like 10 cents to use the bathroom here and there, or things like that. In the city centre, you could use card for a lot of things. Unfortunately, I forgot about that money that I left in my backpack until I'd already cleared outbound immigration going out of Mongolia. And once you're airside, or once you've left the country, you can't sell that currency. So I was left with this Tugrik, which I should have probably used in the country or exchanged back into US dollars or something else before I left. But anyway, it's a really interesting destination. I didn't really know what to expect. I'm generally interested in, as you might have gathered from episode 1, interested in sort of former Soviet countries. But Mongolia it's such a unique place. I haven't really been anywhere else like it. Lots of open space, lots of nature stuff to do, and the capital city itself really surprised me. If you're thinking about where to travel next summer, or next Northern Hemisphere summer, so that'll be like June, July, August in Australia, I could really recommend it. It's visa free until the end of next year, not somewhere that a lot of people have been to, and for that reason it's also kind of a nice place to go, sort of away from the crowds.
Sounds great. I mean, you recommended Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan to me, which we've spoken about previously on the podcast, and I thoroughly enjoyed both of those after your recommendation. So I think I will have to take your recommendation on Mongolia, and hopefully many of our listeners do as well.
Well, that brings us to the end of this episode of Travel Pointers. As always, thank you so much for listening.
And if you enjoyed listening to our podcast, please remember to rate and review us on your favourite podcasting platform. We always love to hear what you think.
Until next time, Chris, happy flying.
Safe travels.